elements of research is idea and execution. The successful execution of a research project depends upon the infrastructure. For infrastructure, funding is essential, which smoothens the execution of the research. A comprehensive cost-benefit analysis helps to examine the research and development consequences of funding. Research funding influences volume of research activities and also productivity of researchers. Today we have with us Dr. Mangal Hagasenkar, currently the professor of Bombay College of Pharmacy. She completed her B.Pharm from ICT at Mumbai University with first rank securing IBMA gold medal. Received her M.Pharm and PhD in Pharmaceutical Sciences from Mumbai University. She has been the recipient of awards including Professor Emma Bechwal Visiting Fellow in Pharmaceutical Sciences and Technology in UICT, Distinguished Researcher National Award in year 2020, and IPA MSB Student Forum Lifetime Achievement Award in 2021. She has authored 117 research articles, 8 review articles, 7 book chapters, and 2 books. She has more than 100 research papers presented at national and international conferences, granted 3 Indian patents and 3 trademarks. Ma'am has 38 years of research experience and mentored more than 45 M.Pharm students and 30 PhD students. Ma'am has research collaboration with various universities like University of Finland, Germany, GS Medical College Mumbai, and IICT Hyderabad. Her research work is funded by several agencies like ICMR, CSIR, UGC, and Lady Tata Memorial Fund. Now I request Dr. Mangal Hagasenkar ma'am to brief us about the or funding opportunities in research.
This where you just put it. Just put it.
Just put it on no?
Yes.
This enough? No need to do anything. Okay. Okay. Are you all able to hear me? Audible and the volume is all right. Huh? Okay. So that tells me how much I can adjust volume of my voice. Okay. First of all, thank you very much for introduction and thank you for this invitation. Thanks to Sujata. And she told me that she's looking forward for listening to exploring funding for research, for enhancing research. And later on, when I was reading, I think the invitation letter, it says that your college, BNCP, is already second rank CII industry linked college. So then I thought, then I don't need to speak on this topic. Okay. And I couldn't read anything about Indian agencies giving funds, but I'm sure faculty members, college is receiving funds from Indian agencies. So then I was wondering, okay, what do you want to listen from me now? But still I decided that whatever was my experience and some structured slides I would put together. If it is of help to you, let us see. So I'm just hoping that it is going to help you. So talking about funding for research. And I have not really kept slides for industry because the volume was increasing a lot. And I'm going to skip some slides just like that. Because I was also wondering, are you cleverly trying to reduce the time which will be made available to speaker? Then I'm just joking. It is on lighter. So I'm going to skip some slides, which are very textual slides. Okay, and then go to next ones, which I feel I should be explaining to you. So if you look at number of slides, don't get alarmed. Research, you know, is very important activity for universities, for colleges, for students, for academicians, for industry houses also. And when I was looking at research as a professor, I considered that was very important aspect of my profile. For teachers as well as for students for different reasons. But research is important. And one point of that would be your own achievement for research. But beyond that, it is also for welfare of society. That society should progress. And also for something which we just don't consider so much is expanding our knowledge base. So when you are doing research at a very smaller level, younger level, like masters, maybe you are not going to do something which is of great novelty, but you'll start learning something and you will add something to the knowledge base. It may be up to that. And beyond that, as it goes ahead, there may be some translation into what can be commercialized and becomes useful to society directly. Others is indirect contribution. And to do research, then exploring funding is essential and inevitable part. You cannot escape it if you really want to do research. Funding is usually acquired. I'm talking about academic research, even for translation. It is usually acquired as a grant, which is obtained through a very competitive process of writing proposal and getting it approved from funding agencies. So if you want to successfully execute a research project, then you know you need many things because we all are doing experimental research. So you need apparatus, you need chemicals. So you want contingent money. Sometimes you may have to travel, you want to attend conferences. Nothing of this is possible without funds. To do research, then you need equipment, you need facilities. So infrastructure is also required. And what is more important is efforts that you put in, maybe as a research fellow, as a research associate, as investigator, co-investigator. So the cost of man-hours, very skilled, qualified man-hours. So that is also expensive. So many a times, just look at the last line, you have good concept, but you cannot transform it into a project research with outcomes if you don't have funds. So funding is very, very important. Now I'm looking on this side first. If you want to successfully do some research, then of course you need aptitude, unless you're just in the flow that, okay, I completed BSc, BPharm, now I'll go for MSc. Somehow I have to have that degree. That is different, but otherwise you need aptitude and you need passion to work on that topic, on the subject. Second point, very important for every one of us, be it a student or a faculty. You need to read and you need to be updated with what is happening in that topic. You need a strong concept if you really want to have a good research project. Otherwise, it will be just me too. Somebody has already written something and I will do a small change, which is not going to be a real contribution. I'm not really talking about a great novelty, but still, you need a strong concept. And when you have this, you need to analyze what facilities do I have? What do I have as resources at my end? Are they adequate for doing this experiment? Or I need something more. And if I need something more, I need to find funds for the same. So now I look at this. Many a times you have very small projects to be done. Although these small projects are not possible without funds. And even if you have undergraduate research, it may not be possible without funds, but you can have them hidden. Means funds are required, but since they are small, they are hidden behind something and you feel, I don't need to apply for a grant. I don't need extramural funds, means funds running from outside to the university. I may have my own funds and within that, some small extension is possible. But if there are large sample studies, if there is extensive, labor-intensive, man-intensive experimental work, controlled trials, say on animals or on human beings, multi-centric, you cannot do it without funds. You need funds for that. Now, if you are looking at research grants, and I'm not going to give you a very detailed information, that is not possible in short time. And also, it is of your interest, whether faculty or students, to look into those funding agencies by yourself to see what opportunities are there. But the type of research grants that you can have means the funding agencies that you can tap at two parts. One is personal, which is for students, I'm saying. The students can write proposal. and students can get it approved for their own advancement of degree for research project. And institutional means faculty members who are employed in the institution can apply. So there are two types. Personal one is mainly for fellowship and awards, or they can be for travel, which we are not actually discussing. And institutional ones would be including fellowship, or they may be without fellowship, only for infrastructure. So you can call them ad hoc grants or extramural grants when they are going through institution. Personal ones, when a student applies, generally you will not get equipment, you will not get infrastructure upgrade, but institution can get it. So that is the difference. The sources for funds, the sources could be from India, and you can tap the sources from abroad as well. So from India, you have several government agencies. They are abbreviated here. I'm not sure as student whether you are familiar with them, but the first one is on medical research. This is on biotechnology, DBT. This is science and technology. This is science and industrial research. UGC, you know. AICT is also known because of admissions. DRDO is Defense Agency, and BRMS is Board of Radiation. And I feel that you can try, depending upon what is your project, to any of these agencies. Because we had in my lab multiple grants from ICMR, multiple from CSIR, really multiple. So I'm very fond of this funding agency. From UGC, multiple of them. Means it is possible to get. That is what I'm telling you, that in maybe we started getting grants late in 90s, and from there to come up to now today is 22. We have had multiple of these grants. BRNS also, UGC also multiple grants. Multiple means as institution also we could get, as students also we could get. And for this, everybody has to be motivated. On student side, they cannot say that, no, my guide will look after this. There should be initiative from student also. And of course, faculty members have to do this because the institution wants to be upgraded, both infrastructure and research. We also had from DBT, DSP, couple of grants. I wouldn't say multiple, but all others, we had about 10 grants. Only regret is DRDO. That we reached up to there and the policy changed at that time. And then whatever was approved, that went into standstill. And the problem here is, or the problem otherwise also, I would like to apply for the grant when my concept for that proposal is strong and clear. If you don't have that, you yourself are not so much convinced. It is very difficult to convince the other person who is reading your proposal. And so DRDO, there is still that strong desire that I have to do something for the army or soldiers, but you should get that strong concept which is workable in your lab. That is possible. I think we will still try somewhere. You can have from trust and societies like Lady Tata Foundation. This is Amrut Modi Research Foundation, and so on. These are just representative names. They are not comprehensive, complete information. Abroad, I have not listed here. Industry, I have listed just few names for whom we worked. So we were working for Bristol Myers Squibb, USA. Worked for Pyramid Life Sciences. Sometimes we were actually working together, and the focus changed from something which is to be commercialized to something that can be done basic. And we have also made publications with industry funds. And that was also very satisfying for us as well as for those industry personnel who were in touch with us. So with Glenmark Pharmaceutical, we were actually working for almost programs one after the other for 10 years. For Gatfos India, we worked for more than 10 years. So the projects just kept coming, 1, 2, 3, 4th phase, and likewise. Janssen Pharmaceutica is still running now. This is also like we had a strong discussion. This is one example of collaboration. We had a very strong discussion once while some meeting in conference. And there problem with this. And then we decided that because of our discussion, since we were working on lean technologies for making vesicular products, otherwise making vesicular products is a long technology. Say, for example, liposomes that we talk about, they require a long preparation method. So we were actually working on lean technologies where you can simplify it so that commercially it should be more easy. Not that liposomal products are not there in a market, they are there, but we were trying to make it easier. And in that discussion, the collaborators and from my team also, we felt that we can write one publication first on the basis of whatever we have done so far. And then we decided to write a publication. We wrote one paper, and this paper is in collaboration with Janssen Pharmaceutica. Rene Holmes is the name of scientist, and other one is Limon Perry. If you have heard, she was chairman president of CRS International. So we were discussing together, and we published one paper there in Advanced Drug Delivery Review on manufacturing methods for liposomes, how they can be simplified. And thereafter, we made a proposal, and that proposal now is funded by Belgian funding agency. So if you are moving towards funding, you need a dialogue, you need discussion. People need to know what is your interest, what is mutually benefiting. And that can be starting point. It's not a very quick process. Process goes on, but you have to be patient also in that sense. This is again the same names that you have seen, and this comes from AICT website as India-centric research funds. And there are some more names which are added, but I'm not going to read them. Banks from foreign agencies. And if you look on different websites, you will find there is Indo-US, Indo-Korean, Indo-France. You can go for them if you have a strong, clear idea in mind on which some work is done in the other country. Otherwise, it would become very difficult, because for Indian agencies, you can apply yourself. If it is foreign agency, you need a collaborator from the other country. So during your work, even for students, when you find that in the paper, in research papers that you are reading, some work is done by some agency or some university abroad. The professor there could help you if you want to do that work, if that is not available here. The collaboration is generally, even if it is available here, you can collaborate. But if it is usually available here, then there is no need to collaborate unless you get some more expertise there. So usually you are looking for expertise and the facility. If they are going to be complementary, then collaboration is very good. But you need for these funds a collaborator from outside. So that is possible by writing to them when you are reading some paper or when you meet people in conferences, faculty as well as for students. Because my collaborations of such type have always been by writing to them and by meeting people. I have had 3 collaborations which were Indo-German, which was because we've been talking to those professors and meeting those professors somewhere. And they were convinced that we are doing something which can together form a good project. So we were making those vesicular products for dermal application, especially to remain in skin for a long time. And another professor in Germany from University of Vienna, which is towards the eastern side. So Alfred was working, he is a biophysics person, but he was working on finding out what is the mechanism by way of which it stays in skin for a long time, and how you can find out how much is there in skin for longer time. So they had very standardized methods, and they could see our particles in with a technique called cryo-TEM. TEM is available for us, but cryo is not easily available. And what happens is, in TEM, you see the particle, transmission electron microscopy. No? But because of electron bombardment, many a time, the particles change their nature. So what you see in photo is not exactly what is there in your product. But if it is frozen under liquid nitrogen and sectioned appropriately, you can see those particles as they are. So that freezing is so quick that there is no time for particles to change the nature. But the equipment, it is actually there in IIT Mumbai, but it's a very elaborate equipment. There are many parts, and a small part goes wrong, then it's malfunction, then it just remains idle. So most of the time you don't get this, but we could get it because of collaboration. So collaborative grants like this are possible if you talk to professors abroad, if you meet them, and many a times funding agencies, once our proposal was not approved because the funding agency said that everything is good, but it looks like the professors have never met. It said like that in their comment. So in the next proposal, we had seen that when Alfred came to some conference at Kerala, he made it a point to visit BCP. We had a discussion. There was one presentation. And then the grant material. So sometimes granting agencies, they have their own views, no? And you need to follow them, which is not possible. Like I cannot tell you everything. You need to read and you have to jump into it to understand. You cannot be just sitting at the bank and seeing how it will work. I'm not going to read this slide. This is the DSP's mission statement and what DSP wants to do. Finally, is to enhance nation's self-reliance in drug and pharmaceuticals. There is synergism that they want to create a good infrastructure, etc., through different funding programs. That is more important from your point of view, which you can read if you go to the website. That there are different types of funding programs, and for every funding program you cannot apply, because some funding programs are only for IIT, ICER. So they want only those types of institutes. Then you cannot apply. But there will be some programs where we can apply as pharmaceutical colleges. So you need to look into it if you are really out for acquiring funds. So this is some terminologies which are used when you have proposals like principal investigator, usually a faculty member. So he is a person who is responsible for directing the project. Not only responsible for directing the project, the principal investigator, she or he becomes accountable to funding agency for whatever is done. So if something is not done, if there are any errors, the principal investigator who has to respond, explain, etc. To make a good PI on part of faculty, need qualification, publication, earlier record of funding, maybe small funding, or earlier record of guiding student. If a student is applying, the student cannot apply as principal investigator. Student is applying for research fellows course, but student needs qualification as required by funding agency. So most of the time it will be master experience that is required by funding agency. If you have some experience of teaching, research, small research projects, that is also considered good. And if you have some publications, if you look into CSIR scheme, generally they would ask for 2 publications needs. So you have to look into funding agencies and see what you have and whether you qualify for applying. If you don't, you need to upgrade yourself. Not to give up, you need to upgrade yourself. You can look for collaborators for complementing when it is from faculty. I've also written something about that term collaboration. If you actually look into it, the description, it says they are from equal institutes, equal partnership. That is what is here. When you have mutually interesting and beneficial research activities. But if you see, when I entered into some collaboration, I actually entered in collaboration with a scientist who was far more experienced than me, and who was from institutes which was far bigger than Bombay College of Pharmacy, where I was working. So it's not that it is equal partnership, etc. You can enter into collaboration if it is required, you see, and if you can strike the bonding. What do collaborations do? From what I was telling you sometimes back, which I told you more for international collaborators, same applies for very qualified, very talented, experienced, and those who have high achievements in India. There are many institutes in India where you have high profile people who have a lot of facilities. And I was looking at from Bombay College of Pharmacy, being in Mumbai, where in near vicinity you have facilities. Even then, there are certain facilities which you cannot avail from anywhere. Then you have to look for collaborators who can help you. We were doing some work on malaria, and we had nanoparticles made, including anti-malarial drug. We wanted to see whether this anti-malarial action is possible. Now, there are some experiments that you can do in Haskins Institute, you know, which has been working for a long time for malaria. But we wanted whether our drug in those particles can give some advantage at liver stage, in liver, so that relapse is not going to be so frequent, or relapse can be prevented. And this kind of work is not possible in Mumbai, which we could do in collaboration with Lucknow Institute, CDR, because there was one scientist we found, and there are people who are ready to collaborate. So they are also interested in seeing whether people have something which will work, and which they can prove that it is effective, not effective, whatever. So collaboration actually helps you to expand networks, to have complementing expertise and also complementing facilities. I have found collaborations very fruitful. They can be fruitful. There could be assistance in long-term research with collaboration. That is my experience. You have sharing experiences. You can establish association with peers. This is from my experience, that they are more useful if collaborators are not too busy. But sometimes we had collaborator who is the director, but was still interested in that work, and we had a good bonding, so the work went on fine. But if a person is very, very occupied, you may not get good return from collaboration, or you might have difficulties. I'm just showing you a slide of funding that is possible from one agency, ICMR. I'm not going to discuss this at all. Just showing you that you can have studentship, you can have JRFs, research fellowships, research associateships, etc. There is something written as thesis also. This ICMR funds for thesis as well, but not for pharmacy schools. They do it for medical students. And this is agency which works more for medical research. We don't do medical research, but if we have in our work anything on human volunteers or even preclinical work, this is a good agency for application. So for students as well as for faculty. So this for faculty, more in this area. For students, for research fellow, for RH. I will tell you one example. When we were applying for ICMR fund, when I applied as professor in institute, I could get research fellowship under that, means a student can work And there was plenty of contingent money also available. I'm saying plenty means if you want to do research, you need chemicals of good quality, you need solvents which are of AR grade, and then everything, the cost goes up. So they were giving about 4 lakhs of contingency per year. Then you can do comfortable with it. Simultaneously, one student applied. So student got senior research fellowship. So he gets the same fellowship. I think 15 years back, that student was getting something like 30,000. 15 years back, 30,000 was quite good. But the contingent money for that student fellowship was just 10,000 per year. And the student was working on antibodies which are required to be generated, purified. Then it becomes very difficult to put in that fund. And then we had to arrange funds from somewhere else to see that the work can be done of good quality. So you need to think over such things also, that your work doesn't get stalled because of less funds or because of very expensive work that you are proposing. I'm not going to go through this part. Okay, this I just kept, though it is thesis grant and it's for medical students, I thought you should look at what is focus of ICMR. You have more probability of getting grants if you are working in these areas or you are proposing some project in these areas. So area like antimicrobial resistance, we have had grants in this area. So this is one area in which ICMR scientists are working and they want people to work in this area. Tuberculosis, HIV, malaria, diabetes, and every day for all funding agencies now COVID-19 is also added. This may not appear here. This is particularly for students. I thought I will display this slide. Prime Minister's Research Fellowship. This is a very prestigious fellowship, and it is possible to apply for this fellowship for meritorious students. Meritorious students doesn't mean first rank student, but you have high academic credentials which you can go to the website and read. But it is possible to get this, and we have made an attempt and we have got. So which means it is possible. So students who are there, they can look into this particular opportunity for fund. And if you look at this, maybe you will feel more like applying because the fellowship which is given is like 70,000 to 80,000. And there is 2 lakhs of grant per year for 5 years with extension, of course. But that is good grant. You need an industry counterpart here. And what I have seen is industry also is now out to help because of this social responsibility CSR, that they have to also provide funds. And now it can be provided for education field, research field also, which was earlier not possible. So this side, it looks like students, they can make a note of it that this is a good opportunity. I have kept this slide because I told you this is my very favorite funding agency. More because the first proposal that I got approved was from CSIR, extramural grant. Was a simple one on cyclodextrin drug association, because at that time in early 90s, that was like a great, what you say, research opportunity to look at cyclodextrin for solubilization. So when we got that grant and when we completed it, when I presented the progress and the appreciation that I got from HRD, HRD means Human Resource Development Group of CSIR. And they assured us that if you have more grants, we will always look into it. It was a very good response. So my first grant was from CSIR. And my last grant when I retired was also from CSIR. So I'm saying this is one of my favorite funding agencies. And they have many grant opportunities at various levels. I'm not going to go through that international funding agency. I just said some words earlier, you can look into international funding agencies and call. So it is like after this, now I am coming to proposal. If you want to write a proposal, now you know the funding agency, you know the types of opportunities that are there with funding agencies, and then the proposal. And this picture looks very good to me, partly because I have clicked it, and also because it is from my ancestral place, which is Palolem, which is spelled as Palolem, Sanakona, Goa. So it's just behind my ancestral house, the beach which is there. I have clicked it because I'm always fascinated by these coconut trees, which are not so straight, but they are finding their ways. And they are there for a long, long time. So I have put this picture because I like the place and I always plan to go to the place. So even if I have to go to that place, I have to do planning. So if you want to do research, you have to do much more planning. Planning is very important. So if I'm going there, especially by road, which is very enjoyable, then I say I have to do a lot of arrangements. I need Google Maps. When Google was not there, we wanted the map there to see from where we are changing from Maharashtra to Goa through Karnataka. Then you need your vehicle should be proper. If you want to stay overnight, you have to make arrangements for that, etc. etc. So similarly, if you want to do research, then also you need to plan. And this was our research profile in the lab. So you see some things moving. They are all showing some particulate structure, which I'm not going into detail. But I can say that it is from conventional to novel one. And our experience is if you don't have grants, then you're likely to get lost in your research. So getting grants or funds is important. And for that, you need a proposal. Even if you don't submit it to funding agencies, as a student, to start with, if you write a proposal, it's a document which outlines your thinking about what you want to do. And therefore, it is very, very important. I always feel, suppose your funds are arranged by your guide. Even then, if you do planning of what you are going to do, and you present it to your guide, if it is not required in your institute, you can present it to your guide. And every day, if you plan what you are doing tomorrow, that makes your research very systematic. So because you are writing something, you are actually thinking about your project, what you are going to study and how you are going to study. So you have got a direction, like I was talking, direction and a map. But the challenge is you have an idea and you want to transform it into a project. Means I have an idea. I want the drug in Solon region. I'm also waiting because they are discussing. I don't know about the idea maybe. Are you discussing about the idea? Second last bench there. Yeah, please don't discuss here. You discuss after this gets over. The idea. Idea is I want the drug in Solon region. But what is important is not just idea. I have to convert it into a research problem, a hypothesis, and how I make that clear, strong hypothesis decides how I will be able to work systematically. So if I want a system, I'm just giving you an example and not from regular one. If I want a system which is flexible, so when it is ingested, orally administered, because of flexibility and because it is not soluble in gastric and small intestinal area, it doesn't release the drug. Because of flexibility also, so because it is getting churned, but it doesn't open. But when it comes to colon area, because of viscosity increasing and the pressure increasing, mounting on that system, if I have adjusted the system's plasticity in that way, that system breaks open. Lot of physics going in also. System opens and then releases the drug there. This is now the concept, not just idea. So from idea, you need to move to a research concept to form a hypothesis that if I use a specific grade of UV for coating, and I'm making it more complex, for coating a capsule, and it is not getting dissolved. The coat is not getting dissolved in stomach, not getting dissolved in small intestine, but only fractures in colon and provides drug relief. And then I must have the testing facilities which will establish that there is no release here, but there is release in colon, and some validation by some way. Maybe you take photograph, you take X-ray, you have radio tracing to show that the release happens only in colon. That is the proposal now for colon specific release by a system which is sensitive to pressure. So from the idea that I want release of a drug for colon cancer to the concept how it can be done is actually framing your proposal. And then it says that you should have clarity, you have to select the design, and you have to conform to the style and format which that granting agency tells you that you have to put it in this format. Who writes proposal? A student writes proposal for PhD application. An academician or researcher can write because whether it is student or faculty member, they want to make genuine contribution to knowledge, or they want to add something to what is known to the subject. But in order to make this start, many a times you have to prove that you are capable of making such contribution. And I will give you one example of an application that we made to Department of Biotechnology. And that was first application from Bombay College of Pharmacy to DBT. So when I made that application, it's passed in its earlier stages, and they called me for presentation. And that presentation somehow turned out to be in front of the board task force members who were all from AIIMS and immunology and such institutes around Delhi. So they were all actually from medical science. And when I presented, they were not so much impressed by what is PLGA and what is phospholipid and what is there in your this. The chairman was actually sitting like this, focused, huh? But he was not looking at the slide. Then he said, everybody talks about PLGA. So what is new in your proposal? So look at the reviewer's point of view. When I tried explaining, I don't think chairman was really convinced. And many people there, because they are used to terminology which is used medically, and we talk a different term. They were also not finding what is the novelty, but fortunately, my luck, that there was one person sitting there who got quite impressed that we had some clear concept of making hybrid particles, and these hybrid particles can have some advantage in delivery of DNA and small interfering RNAs. He was convinced, but he asked me, this is a new college. It was not new college, but they heard it, you know. Exactly. When I told them, no, it is more than 60 years old, but a small college. And he said, you are saying it is a smart setup, but how do we know? And then how can we give a grant of 1 crore to a college who is applying the first time, and it's a very small setup, and you have a very good concept, but it is theoretical concept. He said, show me work that you have made such particles. We had not made anything at that time. So that's why I'm saying you need to prove that you are capable. One way is your experience and your earlier results, but sometimes they insist that you should have some results, preliminary work done. So I came back, we got something to say that you append with some preliminary work. And preliminary work there took 1 year for us because we made those particles, we did some tests to show that it is actually hybrid, that both systems are entering in that architecture. And we took a cryo-TEM to show where we can show the polymer and where we can show the lipids. Then went back to the agency. So it took 1.5 years for us to get the grant. But when we got it, we got 1 crore of grant for working on a very nice project. This is something you can glance that the proposal is useful for everyone. But what proposal does for funding agencies is they look at whether it is feasible and whether it is worth funding. This is what I was explaining to you just now. That they were looking at whether my proposal is worth and is it worth funding. You have to take that also in consideration. You all know that some funding agencies you can apply anytime throughout the year, and some when fall is there. Whichever is the time, always you need to have a very clear and strong concept, and your proposal also should be clear and should run like a story, which is the reviewer should find interesting. And therefore, I'm saying if you are not convinced, then you better improve it before submission. This is one important point. Is when you are applying, you are putting a lot of efforts into that. If it doesn't get approved, the person who loses maximum is the applicant. Therefore, you should take whatever care possible when making that application. It doesn't mean that you just work for a year, 2 years on that. Usually, what I have been following is whenever the ideas are coming to my mind, I was always jotting them down. Whenever I thought that we can work on this, I had written small description. So when the call was there, I already had an idea that I want to, this idea of mine fits into this call. And then I have expanded. So when I was expanding, about 8 weeks time is all right for expanding. But otherwise, if you don't have an idea, you're starting from an idea, maybe you will take 6 months. If you're applying for round the year funding that is available. Right? Give enough time for developing proposal and give enough time to think about reviewers. My experience is if your proposal is strong, it is easier to work. And my students have also told me, particularly for the very first CSIR proposal, the students said, we didn't have to think much. What was not known is the result. But that you don't know until you do it. But everything else, how to go about, was already structured in that proposal. So if your proposal is strong, it is easier to write reports. Once you have written reports for agency like CSIS, every 6 months you write reports. You have already compiled your results. To write thesis is not very difficult. So everything becomes easier if you have a very strong proposal. Reviewer's point, which you should take into consideration, is whether the idea is clear, whether it is worth of study, whether it is feasible. It should not be very routine study. It should demonstrate enough understanding on topic. This is very important. It should not be ambitious like you will keep on working for 10 years. No, because generally the grants are for 3 years. Some, only very few, extended for 2 years, very few. And technically flawless. I feel that nobody should give incomplete application or application which is not fitting into that fall. If it is for orphan drug, you write for orphan drug. Don't write for something which is commercially there in market. Then your chances of getting it through is negligible. Everybody knows this point that when you are writing a proposal, you start with title and you end in expected outcomes. And I'm not going to go through the point. You read it, and for any funding agency, you will find that format has this point. Now I have some points for typing. Typing should be clear, unambiguous, and I am saying, this is my point of view, that it need not be decorative. Typing should not be very long and not very short. Just don't write cyclodextrin complexes. That is not a good title. So I've written some title here. Design. Just see why I have written, because these three words are all that I use. Design, optimization, and evaluation of something. They look so what is Marathi called bulguli, means over it. That you don't really get good understanding through that. Also, every term there is really meaningful, but it is so overused that it becomes a very routine title. So if you try to change the title, at least drug cyclodextrin binary system, improved solubilization, improved drug delivery, role of cyclodextrin in improving drug delivery, or you write something more about drugs there. And best is to write the title at the end. You first design the whole proposal, then go for the title. Usually we like to keep the words which are focus of that proposal as the beginning part of the title. So if I am focusing on a specific drug, then I write as a drug with limited aqueous solubility, use of cyclodextrins to improve bioavailability. But if I'm going to use some model drug, known drug, and they are not very important, but I have done something to cyclodextrin. I have synthesized something on cyclodextrin and I want to try that. Then I'm writing role of cyclodextrin in improving solubility or improving targeting or whatever it is. So you have to also put your titles appropriately and as well as abstract. So usually what we do, this is some graphical abstract. And we used to do graphical abstract. So scientific, we are, even today, my option is not to make it like a story. And we should always say that your typing and the writing is scientific and formal when you are writing a manuscript. But I have observed sometimes that they are not so. I also see one title which is marriage between polymer and something, which I usually would not say, and I would write something like association, hybridization, and some such words. But very good journals have accepted. So it is quite possible. I don't know what makes it possible, that I don't know. But I got one, which when I was reading for COVID-19, I found this paper. And that paper is dedicated Lord of the Rings. So this is actually a paper which is dedicated to Professor Lobster, who has done a lot of work in cyclodextrin. And this was his 70th birthday. So for which his research group actually wrote this paper for their work on cyclodextrin and COVID-19 treatment. But you look at it, the Lord of the Nano Rings. And if you see the graphical abstract, I don't really know Lord of the Rings. I've not read. Okay. But if I look at this, it is coming from that novel or movie. And it's relating then to cyclodextrin and the ring. And the word later in that abstract was one ring does it all. So very imaginative. And this is from International Journal of Pharmaceutics, which is a very, very standard journal. No? So it's possible. This is another example when I was looking. Is from Drug Discovery Today. And I picked this up because on LinkedIn, one of my students, Ketan Patel, who is associate professor in St. John University in US. This is coming from his lab. And I was just reading the paper, it is going as scientific, and suddenly I looked at graphical abstract, and I was like, okay, what is this? And I found it very interesting. I think you all can have your own imagination if you look at for target protein and the nano ship. which is taking it across the barrier. It is as good as much as you can make your project scientifically interesting. You can possibly make the presentation of your content also interesting. And it looks
forces a reader to read, like when you see the graphical abstract.
graphical abstract.
It's a catchy,
See,
you want to read
I
it.
was reading on this side and it was going on very scientifically, good information. I was very happy that Ketan is writing like this. Suddenly I looked at this and I said, okay, no, I must look at this first without.
It raises your
And for you all, maybe if you see the picture, you see more that I should read the article. Because I had a reason to read. Ketan was from our lab.
So you read it reverse, madam. Normally we see the graphical abstract and then we
Yeah, but I didn't see the
Exactly.
abstract.
You read
And
it for
because
yourself.
Ketan Patel's article, I was reading it. But, so I thought that after the, what is that? Lord of the Rings. This will another example. Yes. Okay, so something about aims and objectives that you have to write. This is just only to point out the difference. The aims are like ultimate aims, which are not always measurable. You can write for improving social health, treatment of cancer. These are all ultimate aims, which may go on for years. But objectives are related to the outcome. They are measurable. They are related to your experiments, how you are establishing the evidence that you have achieved or you have proved particular hypothesis. The objectives could be multiple. They could be 5, 6, and you will put one ultimate aim as 2, 3 lines. Introduction. Very difficult to describe how you can write very good introduction. But it should be captivating actually. Because introduction, now I don't read introduction first when I'm reading an article. I start with graph, and that is how I write also. I make graphs first, then I make tables, then I write method, then I write discussion, and then I write introduction, then abstract, and then the title. Okay. So it is a different way because results go like that. No? When you're doing your graphs, you prepare and you have table, and then you want to put your results around these things. Then you write methods to get the results. Then you write discussion, which is difficult actually. Writing discussion.
Chemistry journals, the information is organized like this.
Like
You have
that.
the results and discussion first. Then
But it becomes easier to write. So reading also I do like that. I look at figures first. And you write below the figure because they should be self-explanatory. No? So you understand most of the things when you look at figures, then look at tables, then see result discussion. And then I read introductions. But when a person is reading introduction, generally, it should be so well written that it leads you to the hypothesis. And that is not easy. So I have found in my lab so far, there were 2 students who have been excellent in writing introduction and 2 excellent in discussion. And I don't consider myself to be good in writing introduction. That requires a lot and lot of reading if you have to really write introductions very well. Because that introduction somewhere has to lead to the gap, then to your work and hypothesis.
reviewer, because you have been at both the sides.
Yes,
I can ask you.
Yes, yes.
During the, you have been at both sides, as a researcher as well as a reviewer. From perspective as a reviewer, how would you start reading any article project?
there also I start with results first. Always. That is the style that I have been. I am not saying that it should be done like that. From my experience, it makes it easier for me because I am interested in results first. Results. And it is not that I'm interested in positive results, but results. What happens? Along with introduction, of course, there's background. So what is done in past? Doing the small pilot study test. And work that you want to do should be placed in the context of what is done in the past. Rest of the things are coming around it. and more experience you gain when you start writing. Now, we don't have time to look into a typical kind of proposal, or I will make you write something and then evaluate. Then the exercise becomes more and more interesting. So background and significance, I'm only looking at first 3 points. You should see what you know, what is the gap, and what is the importance of what you are proposing. So your work may extend previous work, or you may write a proposal to avoid previous mistakes, or it is unique. It's much higher quantity. This is very important part, but I have said about this a lot while I was explaining earlier. So I will not go through the slide at all. Saying that hypothesis has to be specific, concise, and should lead to some sort of advantage. Also, will not go through this now because I shared about researchable problems earlier. I'm keeping this slide because saying that if you really want to come to a good researchable problem, you have to read what is going on. And I cannot tell you whether you should read 25 publications or 50 publications or 1 publication a week. Very difficult to say. And this idea and concept is process which is not linear. That you read 5 papers, you get an idea. You read 5 more papers, then you can make more better concepts. It is not that way. So, or what you say, passionate reading and absorbing starts, and it is not linear, so it goes in leaps. Someday you are going forward, someday you are coming backwards. And that is how, from broad theme, you go to a topic, from topic you go to a problem. But this is important, that it is not mere description. It has to be some investigation in it. Without that, it is not going to become a researchable problem. Look at first point. If you are in trendy field, you are likely to get better funding. If you put a grant for proposal for COVID-19, you are likely to be looked at much more than if you put it for fever, cough and cold. COVID-19, yeah. Likewise, I showed you for ICMR specifically. Earlier, we used to actually see that if we have something to do with chemistry, a small chemistry aspect also, we used to put it for CSIR. More preclinical part and clinical part, sometimes we have had clinical trials also multi-centric, that goes for ICM. Biotechnology, as the name suggests, it was taking all biotechnological work. Science and technology was going to DST. And you have many other ways of doing. For example, DST has something for women. So those women who have had breaks or some women-centric problem research can also go as per the call. SERV also has SERV power. It's also for women. And I'm sure there must be something for men also. I have not read about it. Otherwise, they will feel this is like ladies' special. This is not so. I'm not going to go through methodology. Budget, I'm saying budget. If it is exorbitant, then you lose the chance. If it is a low budget, you are again going to lose, because if it is sanctioned, you will find it difficult to do your research in that budget. So you have to understand how to tailor that budget based on actual cost at that time and considering little more than what is required today, because we are going to do that work for 3 years or 4 years. So you actually need to go into budget, and it cannot be arbitrary that, okay, I will ask for 2 lakhs per year, 5 lakhs per year. So sometimes when Department of Biotechnology has given us 8 lakhs per year, because it was required for that project. And sometimes it may be just 50,000 per year. It's not required. So you go for a logical one, but it should not be too high or too low. Now I'm just skipping these ones and going to two applications that we had made and got through. I'm not describing the research. I'm just showing you the overview. This was my last CSIR grant towards my retirement. This came not as my application. So I'm telling you now, every time it is not your application. This came as 5 years plan of nation, 5 years plan of India. We have no those 5 years plan. So in those 5 years plan, funds are allocated to research also. So there was fund allocated to CSIR lab for their own proposal. That lab was IICT at Hyderabad, Indian Institute of Chemical Technology at Hyderabad, and they had some 15 crore grant. And that was multi-centric. So these were 6 CSIR labs part of that program. And they had 3 non-CSIR institutes. And one of them was KES. And because we have been in collaboration with KEN for maybe more than 15 years for various projects, KEN wanted us to be part of this project. And that is how, without making an application, so I had to give a proposal for what we will be working on, and that work was for anti-malarial nanoparticles. And that fitted in their focus. So we entered really without application to funding agency, and we got about 1 crore of grant through this for our project. And we also could collaborate with CDRI Lucknow and NCL at Pune as part of CSIR project. So sometimes you have to tap those opportunities and they come to you through your continuous work. It doesn't happen say in the beginning, or sometimes your proposals are rejected even as a student, but you should not give up there. You have to continue. That is only key to success. This is another one which is on lean technology. The earlier one was Indian agency. The CSIR is a very big organization. You have about 10,000 scientists working in CSIR institutes. This is Indo-German grant, which was for our lean technology that we were trying to make for liposome, which we have taken up trademarks as Leciplex. And this proposal was ICMR for Indian side and BMBF from Germany, the funding agencies, together funded the project. One German lab was involved and 3 were involved. And because we went into this collaboration, before going through things, so I got an access to other network in Germany. So we also collaborated later on with Professor Jennifer Dressman. Those who are working in dissolution, they know that she is also a great name in dissolution. So that is also an example that it is not equal counterpart. So if you look into, I think, her H index, that may be close to 100, and her publications. And we started for that collaboration again by writing a manuscript. So we wrote one article for BioWaver, and then we started with that collaboration. In this collaboration, we already had thought what we want to do. If you look at this, we were still in internal collaboration with X-ray for evaluation, and on this side for cryo-TEM and for skill targeting. The last slide. After skipping many slides, the last slide, but that is the most important part, and saying you have to be passionate about your research. And if you're going to be passionate, you will work out all other things and you'll try to cross the obstacles which may be there, which are anyway going to be there for any activity that you do. So with this, I'm going to wish you good luck for your proposal and funding. And thank you all. I have not included much on industry point of view, but if you have any questions, it's all right for me to take the question.
Just
I mean, the other side, I mean, government funding, because in many of the government fundings, industry collaboration is thought, or, I mean, how it can go.
There are some type of grants which require industry to be part of it.
Specific
And
CSIR,
CSIR, and also this Prime Minister say, and sometimes when industry is part of it, it becomes a long procedure because you have to work on IPR. Maybe when she talks, you will get more idea. But then it becomes, government also wants to have a stake into it, the institute and the industry also very aggressively, they want to have profits because otherwise why would they invest into it? So that makes it sometimes difficult. And my experience has been if you are approaching a large industry, it is more difficult. And smaller industries are more approachable and more willing to collaborate. Because larger ones, they have their processes so streamlined, so they have to also go through steps of approval for everything. So it becomes sometimes very difficult. But despite of that, many a times we can still have with big corporates also. Everything depends on how much the counterpart is convinced that you will be able to do the job. And for that, you need meetings. And I have found that I always have my slide deck with me to show what I have done and what I propose to do. And every time it might not strike into positive part. But it is all right. I think every time when we were doing this, there is always a CDA in place because you are showing your idea.
projects, typically what these scientific bodies and industry is different.
Is different.
Then what should be our approach for, I think typically a project, should we look at the, what is the philosophy of that particular industry and then propose your idea and make it.
It's more abstracted there for all other things like background or what we say, what international researchers are doing and what national researchers are doing. But actually for the study part, the main part, you have to elaborate more for industry than for other agencies, government funding agencies.
Both there would be,
This is
something like.
my experience.
uh,
And industry projects we have handled, they were sometimes very small projects which are like troubleshooting and you are trying to overcome that. Sometimes they were also interested in research, which in long way is going to help them, but not immediately translated into a commercialized product. And sometimes they were actually like how the product is going to come out of patent and they wanted proof of concept for a small study. You just prepare in lab and do preclinical study and then hand it over to them and they would take it forward. So sometimes we also took up to pilot and beyond that we did not bother of how it is going. Sometimes the project, I know, at least once I know that the project was dropped after that because of company reason.
I hear one of you, and a couple of the industry projects, does industry acknowledge you to be as inventor of your work?
Yes, always we have been inventor. Applicant was always somebody from industry. We were always applicant. We were always inventor. So they would be ready to put the whole team as inventor, whoever has contributed. But
People would be there.
financial ones, and they were all sponsored projects. Means the company had already put in money.
It depends on what kind of collaboration.
Yeah, but for Belgian funding agency now, if something comes out as patent, we will also get into applicants. So sometimes it is possible, but most of the time, no.
And an industry project, if you're also contributing intellectually, how does one charge for that intellectual contribution? Sometimes the industry just tells you, you take this, do the evaluation and give it to us. But if you are involved in concept and
Many a
intellectual.
times, actually, you are involved in that. Many a time, and very less number of times, it would be just what is told you are doing. By habit, I think we get attached and we try to have inputs. But I think once you have decided how much is the cost, that is what we have been honoring, we decided, so that is the cost.
Projects like within the project cost, you have separate.
No, that's for our project. Unless that was something like simply a measurement, means I will only particle size is to be measured. There is no principal investigator fee. But for everything else, the college way of budgeting was always principal investigator fee was there. So it is as incentive to you if you are the faculty member.
Because there's a lot of time and effort that goes into that. Something like.
And similarly, the student also should get something.
Fellowship.
Do students have any questions? You can always ask.
I will ask on behalf of students because many times they're asking them.
Okay.
Can they get something like 30,000-40,000 during their M.Pharm thing, some kind of thing? But most of them they are looking for the states, so something smaller, quick,
40,000 of contingent fund,
some grant, something.
some
from their
grant.
state, something.
40,000 of grant is, I guess, could be only internal grant from institution. It's a very small grant for student to apply. 40,000. I don't think there is any government agency which can give. But small funds are possible through Mumbai University grant for faculty. Small funds are possible through Mumbai University grant for, not Mumbai University, UGC minors for faculty. So those are smaller projects in which not necessarily the students are going to do PhD. But that is possible through the guide. And for students, then you have to be resourceful in some connectivity with industry. If they are interested in giving you a small project. And this is also more possible with involvement of guides. Unless some students, they might have some connectivity to industry and some idea which you already discussed with guides, then you are likely to get some small fund forward. Usually, in my lab, I would say that because of funds flowing from government agency for PhD, the proposal, M.Pharms could also work.
That question that you're asking, I think BST Inspire, it comes for the student as well. No?
Yeah, but that is also for, I think, BSc Inspire, there is a student section, meritorious student
Meritorious
can
student.
get. But I am not sure whether M.Pharm can get it. Because I have seen BSc Inspire masters students, means those who have completed masters applying for.
BST Inspire, maybe
But-
I can explore that.
If you read actually BSc, DBT sites, ICMR site or UGC site, these are funding agencies which are providing funds. You can look for whether anything applies to you.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was one student in Vandana Madam's lab,
B.Pharm, rank holder, sometimes.
B.Pharm. and it was integrated PhD. That is Rishika.
And sometimes what happens is their names earlier were different, but the names will keep on changing. A fund opportunity name. I showed you some names. They are there today on website. Tomorrow, if you see, and they are using so many acronyms which are very interesting, like SERB power. I thought it is something to do with power, but it is something for abbreviations. And if you read in detail only, you get to know what is the grant amount. Are there more M.Pharm students here?
Also, they can apply for postdoctoral
Yes.
fellowship, and that comes with the grant.
The research associateship is also, CSI research associateship is something which you can apply while last part of PhD or after PhD is done. Same goes for ICMR. I think these,
DMS is also.
so power goes for those who have completed.
Sharing the link with other HTML.